You're listening to Metal Matters, a weekly Gimme Radio podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hill. If you like metal, punk, hardcore, or anything extreme, you've come to the right place. So subscribe and never miss out. To start off, I'd like to say hi to all the new listeners. Thanks for joining us. There's a lot more coming down the line. I discovered All Hell last year when I was on a short run of dates with my band Tombs. We ended up playing 2 shows together, and I was completely taken by the band's songwriting abilities. They combined the grit of early black metal with the catchy songwriting of Misfits and Samhain, 2 bands that are very important to me. I caught up with the band at their show in Brooklyn during their tour with Ringworm. The band's new album, The Witch's Grail, had literally come out that day, and the band was excited. We recorded the episode in my van, which was parked down the block from the venue. So let's say there's quite a bit of urban atmosphere going on around us, but that sort of adds to the whole vibe, I guess, of the talk. If you dig the episode, please share. Tell your friends about it. You can catch this streaming on Spotify, on Stitcher, Apple Podcast, anywhere that you can listen to streaming audio, you can find this show. If you want to get at me, Mike Hill, you can find me on Facebook as Michael Hill. You can find me on Instagram as Michael_DC_Hill. The true irony of those 2 tags is that the only person who calls me Michael is my mom. First night of tour.
Yep.
And you drove all the way up here.
Halfway up here.
Halfway?
We drove, Cameron, who's filling in on drums, lives in Richmond, so we crashed at his place last night, drove the rest of the way up today.
So it was a long drive for everybody because you guys are on tour with Ringworm from
Yeah.
Cleveland, and that's about a good 8-hour drive too.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So before we get started, let's just give a round and introduce yourselves.
Sure.
And tell everybody what you guys do in All Hell.
Yeah, I'm Jacob. I play guitar and do vocals.
I'm Eric. I play the bass.
I'm Cameron. I'm filling in on drums.
So also, this is your first show playing with the band, right, Cameron?
I played one other one.
One other one, yeah.
One other show? All right. So how long has All Hell been together?
We formed, I guess, in like mid-2013. I think we played our first show in August 2013, and then put out a record as soon as possible, like May 2014, I want to say. So.
And what part of the country are you guys based out of?
We're from Asheville, North Carolina, but we've always had at least 2 out of 3 members not actually live in Asheville. Like I live out in the country, like 30 miles to the north of Asheville. Eric lives out like
Same thing to the
to the west.
To the west.
Yeah.
So that's like the more centralized.
Yeah,
big
it was
town.
just the big place that we could get together. You know, where we used to be able to practice. We just practice at my place now.
Cool.
But yeah.
You guys might be wondering why it's so goddamn noisy. We're literally sitting in a van on the corner, on a street corner in Brooklyn. So there's all sorts
On a
of like
Friday.
ambiance around here. We had cement trucks, some unidentified noise in the background, sounds mechanical in nature. I can't quite identify what it is, but it seems to be subsiding. So I'll probably cut a little bit of that out of this audio session here for your listening pleasure. So how did you guys all get together then?
Well, originally it was myself and the original drummer of the band, the guy that plays drums on the very first album. And then we got Eric. I think he was like the second person that tried out for bass. When the band first started, I was like, I'd like to sing in this band. I was talking to the drummer. He was like, yeah, that'd be cool. We'll find, I know a few guitarists or whatever. We messed around with a couple people. And long story short, by like the second or third show, I was singing and playing guitar and writing all the songs, and that's still how it is today.
Now, was that a challenge for you to sing and play guitar at the same time?
It was. I mean, sometimes it still is, but it was definitely there was a crunch to learn to do it when I had to do it because we had stuff booked. we had someone else that played guitar like the first show or two, and then we had other stuff booked, and it was like, well, do or die, I guess.
Nothing like pressure to bring the best out of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good motivator usually.
Yeah, for sure.
Now you guys are on the eve of the release of a brand new album.
Yeah.
Okay, and before we talk about that, to date, how many releases do you guys have out there, and how can people find them and things like that? Like what labels they come out on, etc.
This is our 4th full length. We self-released a demo and our first record, The Devil's Work, and then we released a record called The Red Sect. It was originally done through HPGD out of Philly, and then we got picked up by Prosthetic. They did a vinyl re-release of The Red Sect. They released our last album, The Grave Alchemist, and then the 4th one, The Witch's Grail, comes out today, actually.
Today?
Yeah.
Excellent. And that's today. When this comes out, this actual episode comes out, it will have been out for about 4 weeks. Unfortunately, this isn't live radio, so there's a bit of a delay as to when people get this.
No time machines. But,
but yeah, I'm excited. I heard a bunch of tracks from it.
Cool.
And there's definitely, well, I hear a lot of things when I listen to you guys, but I'd rather than me tell you what I think your band sounds like, I want you to tell me what your intent is.
Sometimes
with
it's
the music.
interesting to hear both sides of it, though.
Yeah, well, I'll let you go. You go first, and then I'll tell you.
I would say that as a writer, there are certain things, even if it's not intentional, there are things that made an impact at a young age that kind of left an imprint on the musical DNA of what I would write forever. So for me, my favorite band has always been and always will be the Misfits. So there's like a lot of people note like hardcore punk influences, but really it's mainly just, Misfits type stuff that provides that element of the sound. Earth AD, obviously.
Yeah, that's the more metal record for them, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the other thing that's a big influence, I guess, on the way we sound is like a lot of early black metal, really from before it was considered or called black metal. And like if you listen to Earth AD and then you listen to something like the first couple Venom records or the first couple Bathory records, they're not really that far apart. It's like punkish metal, metallic punk. It's, kind of blur the lines. So.
Oh, so you're talking more like first wave.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That, I think, that combination of stuff kind of forms the basis. And then there's definitely lots of other things that creep in. Obviously we all like all different stuff. So.
I've always been fascinated by that first wave just because, I don't think anyone set out to like, Bathory and Venom.
Yeah.
To be in a black metal band,
right?
They were just like trying to create something. Like in my opinion, there are moments even on Celtic Frost records where I'm thinking like, they're going more for this like almost like a Motley Crue kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it actually turns out to be this completely other thing because maybe they can't play as fast or like, there's like a technical sort of deficiency in some areas.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is what. Those sort of imperfections is what caused.
Yeah, there's like an urgency and a need to express something, and you maybe didn't have the technical capability of doing it, so it comes out creating something else that's even cooler, really.
Lyrically, what kind of stuff do you get into? Like, what sort of subjects do you cover in the band?
A lot of different stuff. I guess we kind of get called like a horror band, horror themed. Whatever, but it's kind of all over the place. It's not just like horror movies or like horror books or stuff. There's also stuff that's like a lot of historical stuff that's just been terrifying, or like stuff from the occult. We're kind of all over the place, but it all has like a horror quality to it, I guess. Like the last 2 records, Grave Alchemist and The Witch's Grail, have both been more literary horror, I guess, like gothic and decadent horror. Were big influences on the last 2 records, but the one before that, The Red Sect, it's really influenced by the Haitian Revolution, and a lot of occult stuff and like Haitian Vodun and stuff like that was a big influence.
Do you study a lot of the occult subjects?
Yeah, not really as a practitioner, but like I have a degree. My background is in like religious studies, and I
that's interesting, man.
read and write a lot of like occult stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I met some guy in Burlington, Vermont one time, who was like a religion major, and he was like aware of all the thelemic stuff that Tombs makes reference to.
Right.
And I was blown away that I completely wasted my college years studying engineering instead of like studying something cool like religion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hear that, Eric? He's the engineer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, change your.
I'm just getting the money for music stuff.
Let me talk to Eric about this. We have a little quick digression
all right.
here, man. So you're an engineering student, or did you get your degree yet?
I got my degree in it. I do it for a living. I've been doing it for 2 years now.
What do you think of that field?
I mean, it's fun. I definitely like getting out in the field doing stuff and like the design aspect, but it's stressful. It's I can't do it forever probably, I do it to fund what I'm doing here right now.
Sure. Damn.
But
you find engineers everywhere, man. It's crazy.
oh yeah, I mean, I've met a couple other metal engineers and it's like you never guess looking at it. It's like, "Whoa, really?"
Yeah, Scott Hull, he also has an engineering background. I mean, Scott, you can kind of see him as like a guy who would be into that kind of stuff too. So anyway, back to like the occult. All right, that's enough. On
That's enough.
engineering.
That's
It's
enough
a Friday.
engineering.
Everyone had casual Friday day today at the office. So now we're into the real world
real
of
world.
extreme music here. Okay. I always find that interesting when someone has like a background like that and they're playing music.
Yeah.
Do you think that an engineering background helped you at all as a musician?
Well, kind of. I also have an arts degree, so
Really?
I think that played in more. I did a different route, like kind of unconventional, 2-year degrees instead of getting 1 4-year degree. So I've always had the background in arts, and that's what I did before I got into engineering, and I got into that because I saw the paychecks.
Yeah, that's nice. The
That's about
paycheck's
it.
nice. There's something sweet about getting a paycheck every couple weeks. You can depend on that as opposed to like the life of kind of like the hunter-gatherer existence of being a freelancer,
Yeah.
where you got to wait 6 weeks sometimes to get like $300 or
Right,
something.
yeah.
So back to the occult, religious studies. That was your background.
Yeah.
And the lyrical
And
content
history, yeah.
and history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did you guys record the new album?
We recorded The Witch's Grail at Legitimate Business Studios in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's the same place we did the last 2 records with a guy named Chris Hilbert. And there's a reason that we haven't changed, and it's because Chris is pretty awesome.
Now, is he familiar with your approach, or because sometimes you get these engineers, you work with different people, and they might not necessarily know the music, but they can do a great job.
Yeah, I guess like as far as a playing standpoint, Chris's background, like he's played in metal bands and stuff before, but he doesn't actually record a ton of metal bands. Like when we first started recording with him, like he'd done some stuff for sure, but like he wasn't really that in sync with what we were doing exactly. Right. But now it's like we have a really good working relationship. So
and he's recorded all your material so far?
So things, except for the very first record, yeah. So things just go well.
Do you enjoy the recording process, or is it a tedious sort of stressful situation? That's something everyone has a different answer about this stuff.
It's super stressful for me, because I do all the guitar tracks and the vocals and everything. So it's like, I don't know, it's just a lot to get done. We usually don't spend a ton of time in the studio either. This latest one I think is the longest we spent, and it was 6 days. So there's definitely a crunch, but then there's the thing we were talking about earlier. Sometimes the crunch is what's necessary to push you, make it happen.
I've spoken to people who have spent months recording their LPs for major labels, and it's like part of me is like, man, when is it over?
I think I would go crazy.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I have when I talk to those people, where it's like for example, Cave-In. I interviewed Steve Brodsky a while back, and their major label record, they were like spending months on end doing pre-production, recording different versions of the songs, and it must be great to have those types of resources at your disposal. But I think that after a while, me personally, I would lose my objectives of what I'm trying to accomplish. I think
it's also fun though to record. Like we got a little bit carried away on this one, doing a little bit of weird stuff with with synths and optigons and stuff like that. But you know, that's the fun part of it.
I mean, that makes sense to me because if you think about it, synths fit real nicely with the darker elements of this type of music. I think.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot. I think you guys have a lot of atmosphere. You're trying to go for this like real dark vibe, and I think that having a synth mixed in there definitely lends itself to that.
I think it's something that's awesome on you guys' records, for instance.
Oh yeah, we always got it. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to record guitars for an EP.
Awesome.
So,
Nice.
and we have synths on the we have a 5-song EP coming out. Not to steal the spotlight here, but it's like
It's okay because we like your band. Though.
Oh,
We didn't like your
great.
band.
The feeling's mutual, man.
Okay.
That's why I asked you guys on the show. I want more people to find out about you guys, man, for sure. But yeah, there's synths on that. That's been a big thing, and I think that it really makes sense. Especially, I always like a band like yourself where it's like this real raw kind of thing, but then you have this like synthesizer creeping in, and what's interesting about synth tracks on raw records is that the synth track is almost like this pristine, purely synthetic electronic thing.
Yeah.
And the guitars are just gnarly, and there's drum bleed through, and like room sounds and all this other stuff. So it's like this meeting of two different worlds, And I even back in the day listening to like Celtic Frost and Tom Warrior's experimentation with that, I think might have been like a little too much for some people at the time.
Yeah.
But as time went on, it's like became like an aesthetic. You know what I'm saying?
It's its own thing now.
Now, did you guys bring a synth player in, or like you guys did it? Or?
How many tracks do we have synth on? Was it just the one on this
just the
record?
one, yeah.
Yeah, I did it. It's not like complex or anything. I'm definitely not a synth player, but
yeah,
we all of us mess around with that type of stuff, and it might be something that we incorporate more in the future. It might not. It just depends what it calls for. We also went for like a really, the guitars have a lot warmer tone on this record, I think, than they did on the last one, for sure. That almost has that like analog synth vibe in some parts, and we thought that was an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, are you get pegged with the horror punk, horror rock, whatever,
Right, yeah.
Moniker, but are you guys actually horror fans?
Yeah.
All three, even Cameron?
For sure.
All right, cool, right on. What's some of your go-to horror films?
Well,
I
I'm wearing The Howling t-shirt right now. That's a good one. I love the sleepaway camp movies.
All right. So these are like old school films.
Yeah, I
Nice.
like good and bad horror movies.
Sure.
Because, there becomes a point where they just cross lines and it's the same thing.
Have you heard of a film called Demon Wind?
Yes, it's horrible.
It's the worst. One of the worst. Technically, one of the worst horror films.
I watched
but it's
it.
pretty sick.
I watched it about 3 or 4 months ago on Shudder.
Yeah,
for
that's
the
where
first
I saw
time.
it too. Yeah.
It was.
Yep. All right, have you been watching the drive-in things with like they have like that's part of like this sub series they have on Shudder.
No, I don't think I've.
You're shaking
I
your
haven't
head
kept
back
up with
there,
it.
Cameron.
Isn't that where you it streams different ones or whatever whenever you can go in?
There's like a different like episode where it has Joe Bob Briggs.
Okay.
He'll like do like this 15-minute intro, and then you'll watch like maybe a third of the movie, and then it cuts to him, and he'll talk about what you just saw, basically.
Right. Okay.
You watch it in these sections, and it's like really fun. You know?
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, they had
like,
Blood Harvest on there. They had like a bunch of other films.
My top, like my favorite horror movies though are the original Halloween and The Shining.
Shining.
It's gonna be hard to dethrone those.
Oh yeah, man, that's a classic. Despite what Stephen King says.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the book was great, but actually, the movie's better.
Yeah.
Movie's just better.
Well, they're two different animals, really.
Yeah.
And I think that in the case of The Shining, it was one of the rare occasions when the movie kind of transcended the book into its own space. You know, what
became
I mean?
its own thing.
Yeah, you got Stanley Kubrick, you got Jack Nicholson. You
Yeah,
know.
and a thing that I always say is that's a goal that I have for the music of this band is to be like The Shining, in that you can take it like anyone can enjoy that movie. You can take it at face value and be like, oh well, that's a neat like scary ghost story or whatever. But like you can also go down the rabbit hole with all these crazy theories, and all of them and none of them are equally true. And you can think about it and, go crazy and theorize, like, what is this movie actually about? And I think that's interesting. Like, to be able to write music like that, or to make, a movie like that can make people talk about it for years, is like, that's the goal.
Yeah, no, definitely. That is a movie that's, passionately discussed among fans.
Yeah. So like that's one of the reasons, like with that sort of thing in mind, is one of the reasons why a lot of our music, like musically, is fairly straightforward and simplistic, because we want that like hookiness and that like get your attention, like you can enjoy this, but then like lyrically there's some crazy stuff going on.
So that you use allegories and stuff?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Like sort of metaphors and all that stuff?
The last album, like on the surface, is like about vampires, but
right.
It's actually just this huge convoluted alchemical metaphor.
Yeah, the vampire motif has reared its head in a lot of different, expressions. Abel Ferrara made a vampire movie called The Addiction. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I don't think so.
And, Abel Ferrara is the guy who did, Bad Lieutenant and King of New York and all these films. And he had an addiction problem.
Yeah.
So him adopting the vampire sort of thing, the need for, human blood and, life force and all that stuff, it kind of was a neat little connection with all
it's
that.
definitely an archetype that has a lot of different ways you can go with it, interpretations. So,
and it also had that. You should check that movie out. It's hard to find, but if you could find it, you might have to get it as like a DVD or something.
Yeah.
It's black and white. It's like in New York City. Abel Ferrara is like a very devout New Yorker, and all of his films have this very old school like New York vibe to it, and it's got like a Schoolie D soundtrack.
Nice.
Even though Schoolie D's from Philly, he appears in a lot of Abel Ferrara's scores and soundtracks and everything.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. So what about you guys? What's some of your favorite horror films?
I like, ambient horror, stuff that you can really just, the visual atmosphere of it brings horror itself, stuff like Suspiria, and even if you don't call it horror, like David Lynch stuff.
Oh, yeah, man.
Definitely David Lynch stuff. I mean, we're all David Lynch.
Yeah, man. Definitely.
Yeah, we're fanatics. But like older stuff, too. Night of the Demon, a film from the 50s. It's a great film. Stuff like that. I think in newer movies, I've liked It Follows. That was probably the most recent newer one I've liked. House of the Devil. I think that was like mid 2000s. Yep. That was a really good one.
That was like a sort of a throwback. If you didn't know any better, you would think that came out in the 80s.
Oh, definitely. Like the intro theme, I just watch that on YouTube all the time just because it's so perfect. Girl walking down the street with the kind of synth guitar music going on. It's like, something's going to happen.
Definitely. Cameron?
I'm a big fan of like the real cheesy 80s horror movies, the Peter Jackson Bad Taste, Brain Dead type
Bad
stuff.
Taste,
yeah,
yep.
The worst movies, but I love those things.
What trips me out is the fact that, all right, everyone these days thinks about Peter Jackson as the guy who made Lord of the Rings. Right. Now, prior to Lord of the Rings, he really didn't do anything like that before. Yet somehow they convinced him to give him all that money.
Right. Yeah. Millions and millions of dollars.
It blows my mind. And yet he totally pulled it off.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh yeah.
Because I love the 3 Lord of the Rings films, and I actually didn't see The Hobbit, but
Don't bother.
yeah, it's I didn't really like the book either. I just liked the 3 Lord of the Rings novels. So you guys are really into the kind of the 80s stuff, I see, man. Even though you like the newer stuff, but those like 80s like slasher type films are really in your wheelhouse, man.
Yeah, I mean, even stuff that's not, smart or intelligent, like
Well,
all the Friday the 13th stuff, Nightmare on Elm Street, the bad Halloweens. I mean,
one of the things I love, the parallel I think between horror and metal is that what you touched on, that even bad metal is still pretty good.
right?
I mean?
Yeah,
And like
there's usually something cool about it.
yeah, Bang Tango or something like that is not a band that I would like in front of my when I'm around my friends. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be like representing them, but on some level, like I'll when I'm by myself, and no one's around.
Sometimes it's okay to listen to Coldplay.
I'll be like scanning through YouTube and I'll catch like a Bang Tango song and I'm like, that's actually pretty good, And then the same thing with horror films too, because it's like we talk about Demon Wind, which is like not a good movie at all.
Right.
But I watched the entire movie, and I'll probably watch it again at some point, maybe even tonight at like 2:00 in the morning or something. But that's like the fans of horror and fans of metal oftentimes are the same people, but also I feel like they have the same sort of intensity about what they like, and they also have like a very sort of like forgiving bandwidth of things that they'll accept in some ways, you know what I mean? And when I mean that in a positive way, what they'll accept, you know what I mean? What counts as a good movie, you know? And I think that speaks to like some of the rawness of like, you know, the music, like the black metal stuff, like the early Misfits stuff being very raw, but the intensity and the atmosphere is really what kind of shines through.
Right.
Yeah. You know.
But at the same time, I guess that can be a negative, because like you hear people talk about, oh, like rock is dead or like metal is dead or whatever. Like there hasn't been like a great horror movie in a while. I think it's because like it does exist. It's out there. It's just hard for something to break through because there's like this ingrained culture of what people expect.
Yeah, but you know what though? I think that it kind of goes full circle with like, you know, people if people are saying that, you know, horror is dead, metal, whatever's dead, I defy them, because there's been excellent entries into both of those media.
There's always something good.
You know, there's like a new film that just came out. It's I want to say it's Swedish, called Hagazusa, which is like, it's like basically like if you took a Leviathan record and made a movie out of it. It's kind of, it's like that. It's like this dark, doesn't end well, heavy, atmospheric, like lonely like film, man. And it's like so good. And that just came out. There's like the movie called Hole in the Ground. That's fucking awesome, man. It's like there's a lot, you know. And on the other spectrum with movies that are like not high concept, there's the Terrifier movie, which I think was fucking amazing. Even though that borrows heavily from 80s slasher films, but it's like if you took like an 80s slasher and injected steroids into it, you would come up with like Terrifier. Yeah. You know, and the same thing with metal. There's like tons of great bands. I mean, you guys,
I think there's great movies and great metal records being made. It's just not necessarily, they're not in the limelight right now. It's not the mid 80s, so horror and metal, neither one of those are huge.
But also, do you think that maybe it's better that it's not really in the limelight?
Probably.
Because even like, you know, we're talking about the 80s, you know, I was alive in the 80s.
Yeah.
I was like,
I was a little bit.
Yeah, you guys are probably a little bit barely alive in the 80s. You know, and I know that there might be this perception that bands like Slayer or Metallica were as big as they are now in like 1985.
Right.
But they really weren't. And I think that the bands that were big were bands like Motley Crue and Rat and, you know, Van Halen, which is more like a hard rock band.
Right.
But and even those bands weren't that big, and nor were they able to really maintain a career. You know, when you think about Motley Crue, it's like they had like a couple of spikes of success, but they were never able to like maintain like a solid career like say Iron Maiden did.
Right.
You know what I mean? Iron Maiden was always at the top.
Right.
And but the stuff that we like, you know, like Venom, Slayer, you know, Celtic Frost, the darker, more obscure stuff in the 80s was definitely not, that's something you had to look for. Like you had to like know where to go. Certain the metal record stores, the metal and punk record stores, you'd find that stuff there. And even though all that stuff was on major labels, it was like you still wouldn't find, you'd find like one copy of like Rain and Blood or something like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it is now. So I think that it's pretty cool that like there are a ton of good bands. I think, you know, and I refuse to be like jaded by like what people say. Or you read the internet and they're like, you know, everything sucks, man. You know?
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly apparent to me that the internet and reality are two different things.
They are, right?
Very different
social
things.
media and the internet, they're like these parallel worlds, really, you know. And I just think that, and you know, you guys are on the road. You play with different bands like nightly, and you probably played with a lot of bands that no one's even heard of that are probably totally sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, I don't know. I just like to keep, like around here in New York, there's a lot of bands. There's a band called Imperial Triumphant that's like totally amazing, and they're still kind of like battling to get people to know who they are
get
outside of the
recognition.
tri-state area,
Yeah.
you know. But so this is the first night of the tour.
Yep.
How long is the tour?
It's super short. It's just 5 nights. It was supposed to be quite a bit longer, but ended up not being.
You guys are all looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We're stoked for it for sure.
Do you guys like playing in New York?
We like playing in New York. Loading in New York is usually not very fun, but
Yeah, you guys had one of the most bands like dread the upstairs load in.
yeah.
Right? So you guys had to endure that today,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. But I guess the nice thing about New York is a lot of clubs have a back line, so
Oh, so
don't
the
always
venue
have to.
provided that.
you don't always have to have cabinets. So
Okay. Yeah.
we didn't have to take cabinets upstairs.
That's good.
There was at least that.
That's all that matters, really.
Do you play through a SVT, like one of those gigantic refrigerator cabinets that no one wants to carry?
No, he's got a small
just
cabinet.
1x15.
All right, cool.
I mean, we're in a minivan. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that every bass player is like go-to.
I gotta have the fridge, man.
You gotta have it, man. And like but they're like the one who's not around to like move their
Yeah.
cabinet. You know? So prior to All Hell, did you guys play in other bands?
I think All Hell is mine and Eric's first band, but I know Cameron's played in a bunch of bands.
Well, Cameron's like a hired
Yeah,
gun.
he's
over
a hired
here,
gun.
You know. He was probably in like Whitesnake and
Yeah, he
you
was.
know,
Yeah, he was.
all the versions of Whitesnake. That's pretty cool that that's your first band.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Now the artwork, there's a consistency with the artwork on all your records.
Yeah, the last two were done by the same guy, and the first two I did. I mean, mine are obviously much less intricate and nice than the newer ones, but yeah, artwork and aesthetics are hugely important to us and always have been.
You know, I had the same, very similar conversation before about artwork and in general in metal and heavy music. More so in other genres, there is a strong connection between the visual presentation and, you know, and the music.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on that? Like, why do you think that is?
I don't know what it is. I think just historically metal albums have had some really cool art, so it's always been a thing that's important to people. You know, like record covers, merch, like having cool merch. It's like something. It goes back to the metal like culture thing. It's something that people take pride in.
Yeah.
I guess more so than, you know, you don't really see a lot of like artistically mind-blowing pop album covers
No, you
or
don't.
anything, or like
Not at
country
all.
or whatever. It's usually just like a super Photoshop photograph of whoever the main person is.
And you know, that's something that we all take for granted, I think, as far as, you know, just the idea of merch, because you go see like an indie rock show and there's no one buys anything.
Yeah.
Like I saw the Brian Jonestown Massacre a couple of years ago, and they had like one T-shirt,
Right.
and
Like-
no one was buying it.
Like, how many people have you ever actually seen in a Taylor Swift T-shirt?
No,
Very, very few.
now you don't see it at all. You know, but then time after time, you'll see people roll up and will buy new shirts all the time, which I
Yeah.
think is cool. You know, and I'm the same way. It's like I think I have like 6 Ringworm T-shirts. Actually.
Yeah.
I got an All Hell T-shirt. You know, I got like I'll probably buy another one tonight. You know, I got like 4 Leviathan T-shirts.
Nice.
I even have like a Lurker of Chalice long sleeve, and that band's never performed live. Neither
Yeah,
has
I
Leviathan,
had
so.
I was on the fence whether to pack only Danzig shirts for tour or not. I just brought 2 or 3. I didn't go full force.
Now you mentioned Misfits being a huge influence. What about like Samhain and
Yeah,
and all the other
definitely.
stuff?
Samhain also has been a big, like everything Danzig's done basically. I would say like Danzig himself, like his project is the hardest to hear in our music, but it's still there. And like Samhain for sure. The first demo and the first record both had a song on there called Samhain When. That was pretty much just, you know, Samhain, like very Samhain inspired.
Yeah. Well, that was like when I first heard of you guys, like, which is like a little bit over a year ago. we did those dates down in
Yeah.
Georgia and down the South, and or the mid Atlantic or whatever you want to call it. You know, I was like, all hell, obviously a Misfits, reference.
Yeah.
And then I listened to your music, and I was like, oh yeah, these guys are coming from a direction which I can dig, like Samhain, and like Venom and all this stuff. So knowing what your intention was, I think that you definitely was successful in getting that across.
Cool.
And because like some people, like you were saying before, it's like they have an idea what they sound like, but then it's like, we're kind of like Judas Priest meets like Mahavishnu Orchestra or something like that, and then they sound like Kiss or something.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know, but with All Hell, I think it's like definitely sits like right in that, like, it's not. There's a fun element in the fact that you guys have a lot of like the horror references and like the horror imagery.
Yeah.
Like I got that T-shirt with like the church and the haunted
Yeah.
sort of vibe to it, and I wear that shirt all the time, not just because I like you guys, but also because it's a cool shirt.
Right.
Yeah, and that's like there are people that, like, I went to go see. There was a show in this area. I was telling you about how out here in Bushwick, I went to like 3 different shows at 3 different venues. The last time I was out here, I was wearing the All Hell T-shirt, and so many people were like, "Oh, dude, that's a cool shirt." Like, "Oh, you got to check the band out, man." It's like the shirt looks cool. The band's like totally fucking equally as cool, So yeah, that's definitely a good way of getting the connection between like the visual, because like that's like the first thing you see, and like it goes into your brain and makes this image, and then if the music connects with that, I think it's perfect, So what cities are you guys visiting on this outing here?
We got Brooklyn tonight. Tomorrow night is Richmond, and then Norfolk, and then Raleigh, and then Atlanta is the last night, I think.
Short and sweet.
Yep.
Cool. We all played Atlanta together.
Yeah, that was an interesting show.
It was a satanic temple ritual sort of evening.
Yeah, it was interesting.
That was the second time that we've played a satanic temple.
Yeah, I think you told me that you played one in Detroit or something.
Yeah.
Also on accident, like you just got asked to play it, and then it turned out to also be that.
I think that one was more of like combining of 2 shows.
Yeah.
Because there was like another thing going on, and then our show was that night, and they were like, well, why don't we all just put it as one thing? So because Detroit's a rad city in a lot of ways, but I think that 2 shows like in that sort of darker metal punk kind of vibe, I think really couldn't happen on one night.
Yeah.
And so I mean they have an interesting sort of platform, I think, and it's not really my thing. I mean, Satanism, I think it's like you can't really be a Satanist and reject Jesus. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because as a religion major.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with what you said.
Yeah. I mean, I really would like them just to be like, yeah, we think like Baphomet is cool looking.
Right.
That's not even a satanic symbol.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it Eliphas Levi?
Yeah.
And it's actually a Hebrew. It's like universal balance.
Right. It's an avatar of wisdom.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's not this evil, like satanic,
right.
dark.
It has
symbol.
a goat head, so it looks like the devil.
Yeah. It's like I thought that was it. And then I don't know if you've. I mean, this is gonna. I've seen the Sabrina. You know what I mean? This Netflix show, and I think the Satanic Temple sued them.
Yeah, I heard about that. I haven't seen the show, but I heard about that.
I think that was going on when we played that show.
It was like in
possibly.
the midst of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I know. It's I think it's interesting because I don't know. I really would like to know on a higher level like what their deal is as far as like what their actual philosophy is, because they seem to be involved in a lot of this like progressive, stuff that's cool,
like progressive humanism. Basically.
Yeah, and then I totally back all that stuff.
Yeah,
but there's the twist of, and I think that's almost like a way of them being rebellious, which I could dig. I get behind that.
I mean, maybe it's just a way to draw more attention to it, and it gets more eyes on what they're doing than would normally be on them, I guess, than if they were just going out and volunteering and help people that way or whatever.
Yeah, but the funny thing though is like, like witchcraft has been around way before Christianity, and that's inherently like a feminist kind of trip. You know what I mean? And I think that, who am I to tell anyone what to do, man? But that would have been a more positive, like cooler thing to get behind than like Satanism. I think.
Yeah.
Especially.
But I guess it's easier to get attention with the Satanist thing, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like, oh, you guys are trying to get attention.
Yeah,
like if
that's good.
if you're trying to get eyes on what you're trying to accomplish, that's good.
Then again, there's also the kind of Luciferian, which might be like more in line with their, because they like to party, they like to get loose in their rituals and everything. So there is like a Luciferian vibe to that too. You know? So I don't know. I'm fascinated by it. It's not enough.
It's always interesting to get different people's perspectives on stuff like that.
So you guys have any satanic philosophies or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys?
The devil.
I mean, like when I was younger, like in college and stuff, I read a lot about Luciferianism. I got into that for a while, but I mean, I never like stayed with it, so to speak. But it was fascinating to me at the time, and it definitely like shaped a lot of the foundations of like how I view the world in some sense.
Yeah, I could dig that. I just think that like a lot of the group mentality is probably for me like, it's cool when you're on your own and you're like, yeah, man, this is cool. It's like it's dark skulls and whatever. But then when there's someone who's making up rules about like okay, well, if you're gonna be satanic, you gotta wear black and you gotta have this like pin, with like a goat head and everything and whatever. We have to reject Christ, and all this stuff, which is like, yeah, sure, sounds great. But the minute someone starts telling me the rules is when I start checking out, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like the instinct at that point is like, well, this is what I didn't like about the other thing.
Exactly. It becomes like what you're trying to rebel against.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of ways is kind of like a lot of the weird like social justice stuff that's going on, I guess, these days with people getting singled out for being offended and all this other stuff. So anyway, whatever. Diatribe about Satanism.
Easy to digress.
Yeah.
When you get into these waters.
Yeah, definitely, man. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, and good luck on the rest of the tour.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
the whole tour,
yeah,
really. And so let's talk about the record a little bit, like where it's out today.
Sure. Yeah.
And where generally is it? Just do your thing, man.
It's available on all the usual online outlets, streaming on Spotify, Apple Music, or whatever they're calling it now, and Bandcamp. It's available through Prosthetic. I think there's one vinyl version that's exclusive through us and through their web store, and then one that's like exclusive through like record stores.
Cool. Nice. How do you guys feel about all the streaming stuff? Are you into that, or do you still buy records?
I definitely still buy records. I mean, I do listen to stuff digitally. Like I check stuff out, and then if it's something I'm into and plan on actually listening to, then I pick up a physical copy of it. I actually like CDs. I mean, I do buy vinyl, obviously, because it's superior, but I drive a lot because of like where I live. So for the car, like I'd rather listen to CDs than.
I'm not opposed to a CD.
Than a low quality stream, at least.
Yeah, the streaming stuff. I find it it's just weird, man, because it's funny because it is a way where all right, major labels own all these streaming services, and it's like, okay, well, no one's buying our hard products, so let me figure out another way to nefariously rip off musicians and
it's kind of funny. I was gonna say, like, in a way, streaming does suck, but we're never gonna have to worry about it.
No, definitely not.
It sucks for the aforementioned Taylor Swift, but it doesn't impact us very much.
It's complicated. Let's leave it at that. Because I stream the shit out of music too, man. Like I have an Apple Music subscription, and it's like, I'm listening to all sorts of stuff, and it is good because it'll open me up to stuff that I normally wouldn't have checked out.
Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy how many people come up to us at shows and are like, "Man, I found you guys on Spotify." Like, we didn't before like the last year or 18 months or so, like we didn't even realize that people actually discovered bands and left their houses to go see them because they heard them on Spotify, which blows my mind.
Well, this is the trippy part because, all right, now actually we weren't talking about magic, but like it's kind of magical in a way that there's this reality of the internet, which we were talking about, and then there's like the physical material world, right? So your music is out there in this ether, right? And someone finds it, and then their intention gets manifested in the physical material world by going to a show.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you should put it that way because I was having this conversation with my brother who's doing our merch just the other day. Like whenever we got our vinyl and stuff, it's like finally manifested. I remember when this was just barely an idea in my mind 3 years ago when I finished writing the last one. Like the wheels start turning, and then, eventually.
That is
happens.
one of the cool things about being human, is visualization. You know what I mean?
Right.
Is like having an idea and making it into reality.
It's so much harder than people would think that it is, but then it's also that simple. Like if you want something to happen, like you got to want to do it. The most important thing is to have a goal. Yeah,
but you'd be surprised how many people get distracted though, and
that's
really
absolutely.
That's the separation right there.
Yeah.
It's like everyone would love to like do all these things, but like I think it's rare, and it's cool to talk to people that actually are able to do those things,
Yeah.
And be able to put the distractions out of their head or manage those distractions so that they can actually bring something forth.
It's definitely easy to get distracted. I think it happens to almost everyone.
Yeah. No, totally. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Where can everyone find you guys on this imaginary world of the internet?
This imaginary world of the internet, Facebook.com/allhellband, allhell.bandcamp.com. Those are our two. Instagram @allhellband. I think the Twitter's the same @allhellband.
Do you guys fuck around with Twitter that much though?
Not really. I mean, a little bit.
I don't think I have it sent where shit is automatically posted on there, but I don't think I've ever it's been at least a year or two since I've actually went to my Twitter account. Yeah. How about Instagram? Is that a good spot?
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook for sure.
Cool. Right on. All right, guys. Well, I'm looking forward to the show tonight.
Awesome.
And you guys have vinyl with you tonight?
Yep, we do.
Awesome. I'll be picking up a copy.
Excellent.
And, All Hell, new album, rocks, and you guys should go and check it out. That's it for this week's episode of Metal Matters, a Gimme Radio weekly podcast. Tune in next week to see what we have in store for you. The show is available on all streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, etc. Also, be sure to check out Gimme Radio, streaming on the web, iOS, or Android, for one of the best metal communities, exclusive merch, interviews with artists, and so much more. I'll catch you guys next week. Take care.